And for this Old Testament passage, this can be a little bit confusing actually, because Jeremiah really has a problem. And the problem is that the people of Israel are going to have to go through some hard times, and they're going to get harder and weirder until they get better. It's a long-term view that he has from the Lord. The problem is that there are a whole bunch of false prophets or prophets that would want to tell the people of God what they want to hear. And Jeremiah repeatedly has to continually to confront not only the people of God with the message that God has for them, which is that Babylon's going to come, enslave them, and that they're actually supposed to go along with it for a while so that they can stay in the land. And he's got a plan in the end if they can trust him through it. But it's kind of, it runs a little contrary. It feels a little bit weird compared to what the normal messages are. So there is this repeated thing about a yoke, which is a prophetic sign. So Jeremiah wears this yoke on him as a sign of what God wants them to do, to come under the yoke of Babylon for a while. And a false prophet confronts him and takes off the yoke and cuts it into pieces and said, that's not the will of the Lord. And they kind of have this confrontation, and God speaks very strongly to that prophet and says, now that you've taken the wooden yoke from me off, I'm going to put a yoke of iron. It's going to get a lot harder. And then Jeremiah writes this letter to the exiles. And basically, he writes to everybody. He stops just communicating to those in power. And he writes an open letter to the exiles. And he says, look, settle down, settle in, remain distinct as the people of God, but don't be afraid to buy homes, to plant crops. This is going to take a while. And it's actually this beautiful letter of how God's redemptive purposes aren't stuck in one dimension. They're in every dimension, so that as Israel is blessed, so is actually Babylon. And that's actually part of God's plan, is to bless the nations that his people are in everywhere, even those nations that don't deserve it. And this is also really handy for us. If you're wondering how to apply this, is maybe God has been speaking some stuff to you and you're like, that can't be right because you don't want it to be true. And maybe you need to re-examine your own heart and motives. And maybe there's some circumstances you're going through that you don't understand. And you need to say, you know what? I'm going to trust God in this one. And I'm going to believe that his ultimate will is going to be done in my life. And I'm not going to listen to sort of those prophets that want to tickle my ears and tell me what I want to hear. I'm going to zone in to what God wants me to do and what he wants me to say and how he wants to shape my character through the circumstances I'm going through. I hope this reading was as fun for you as for me.